Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. As of this recording, we are still in the liturgical season of Christmas, so I hope you have had a blessed Christmas celebration. My name is Stuart Hamilton. I'm the Pro-Life Activities Coordinator for the Archdiocese of Louisville, Kentucky, serving under Deacon Stephen Bowling, and this is 5 Minutes for Life, where we take 5 minutes to discuss one topic, one ministry, or one event that affects the pro-life movement here in the Archdiocese of Louisville. Now, this is a special episode. We're actually doing a two-parter on the Dobbs versus Jackson Supreme Court case. This is probably the most important court case dealing with abortion in my lifetime and possibly in your lifetimes. So we really want to do that justice. In this video, part one, we're going to talk about where the case came from. We're going to break down the oral arguments, and we're going to discuss why it's so important. In the second part, what's more important is we're going to talk about how the pro-choice side of the conversation is reacting to Dobbs versus Jackson on the city level, the state level, and the federal level, unfortunately. Now, I think that's extremely important for us pro-lifers to take note of and to react to. So if you're not interested in the legal commentary, you know enough about Dobbs versus Jackson, at least go to that second part. I'll put a link in the description below and hear how the pro-choice side is reacting. So part one, Dobbs versus Jackson. What is it? Well, Mississippi enacted a law that banned all abortions after the 15th week of pregnancy. So you're in Mississippi, after 15 weeks of pregnancy, you cannot get an abortion. It's illegal. This is in direct conflict with the two Supreme Court decisions that federally legalized abortion. That would be Roe versus Wade in the 1970s and Casey versus Planned Parenthood in the 1990s. Collectively, those cases, those decisions said that the state does not have the right to hamper a woman's procurement of an abortion, except at least at the point of viability. Now, the viability standard is going to become very important in Mississippi's argument. Take note of this. At viability, that's the point at which a baby can survive outside the mother's womb. So Roe and Casey both recognize that a state can enact common sense legislation at the point of viability as long as it doesn't place an undue burden on the rights of a mother to procure an abortion, and that's why certain states are able to get partial birth abortion bans. Now, Casey and Planned Parenthood, they set this point of viability at about 24 weeks of pregnancy. So 24 weeks of pregnancy, Mississippi basically said, we don't agree with that. We have a different standard. Our standard is 15 weeks. So clearly the Mississippi law is in direct conflict with Roe and Casey. And this law has been working its way through the court system, and the Supreme Court said, okay, Mississippi, give us your best arguments. Why should we allow you to uphold this law? So on December 1st, the Supreme Court heard the oral arguments of both Mississippi and the pro-choice defense. We won't know the Supreme Court's decision. They're still deliberating. They're going to have to write their decisions. We're probably not going to know until June what the Supreme Court decides. But you can listen to the entire oral argument, and I'll put a link of it in the description because it is high caliber argumentations. It's well worth the listen. I'll listen to the entire thing, and I'll just break it down for you right now. Mississippi basically made two arguments. First, they said the standard of viability is a bad standard. And so when Roe and Casey set that standard, it was completely arbitrary. You just pulled it out of the air, and it satisfied no one. And it's unworkable legally. If you're pro-choice, you believe you have a right to an abortion after the point of viability, and that's why people are arguing they should be able to have partial birth abortions. And if you're pro-life, you believe a baby has the right to life before the point of viability. So basically, the court system has been embroiled in unending litigation in all 50 states for 50 years. So what Mississippi suggests is overturn the standard of viability, turn it back over to the states, let the states set the standard for what is undue burden for them, and let the states set the standards for how they will handle abortion. Now, the second argument that Mississippi made is more fundamental. They said, look, Roe and Casey were fundamentally and egregiously bad decisions. They were bad legal precedents. There's nowhere in the text of the Constitution that suggests that a woman's liberty includes the right to procure an abortion. This was a bad decision on the same line as Plessy versus Ferguson, which upheld segregation. And just like that decision, the Supreme Court should overturn Roe, overturn Casey. Whenever the court makes a bad decision, it politicizes the court, and the court has become increasingly politicized because of these bad decisions. And I want to read just one quote here that Mississippi's defense made. Quote, "Nowhere else does this court recognize a right to end a human life." So this bad decision is uniquely bad because it involves the loss of human life. And because the stakes are so high, you should undo Roe, send it back to the states, let the people decide, and not just a select few on the Supreme Court, and let the states set the standards. Now, the pro-choice had a defense, and they had a few arguments too. So first, represented by Julie Rickleman, the pro-choice side said this: "The standard of viability is completely good. It has preserved a woman's right for an abortion for 50 years. If you undo the standard of viability, you undo Roe." And both sides agree on this. You undo the standard of viability, you undo Roe. Therefore, you cannot uphold the Mississippi law without gutting Roe and Casey. They both agree on that. Now, the pro-choice side, Rickleman, went on to give more arguments. She said, first, it would be bad to undo Roe because there's been no substantively new arguments that Mississippi has provided that weren't taken into account in Casey and Roe. So the only thing that's changed is we have conservative justices. If you undo Roe, it will taint the Supreme Court's precedents with politics, and the Supreme Court will lose authority in the eyes of the people. Now, Mississippi had a good rebuttal to this. They basically said, "What are you talking about? There's been all sorts of new scientific things that we've looked at. We can now hear a human heartbeat in the womb much earlier than Casey could have. We can now see in the womb the fetus recoiling whenever they're poked and prodded in the womb, well before the point of viability." But that's what Mississippi argued, and that's basically what the pro-choice side argument. But more fundamental, the pro-choice side said this: if you undo Roe, you will turn the clock back on women's rights. Abortion over the last 50 years has become an American institution, they argue, and women rely on abortion to maintain equal social footing with men. So you do away with abortion, women will no longer be equal to men in America because so many states are already poised to ban abortion. And this will affect especially the poor women the most. Now, both sides, I will say, argued their points articulately and thoroughly. Once again, I say you should click on the link below and listen. But several of the justices seemed to show sympathy for Mississippi's argumentation. So that's led pro-life commentators to prognosticate that Roe's days are at an end. Now, I'm not going to do that. We'll find out in June whether that's the case. But what's not in debate is how the pro-choice side is mobilizing in reaction to Dobbs versus Jackson. And that's what we're going to deal with in part 2. So please click in part 2. And if you like what we're doing here, smash that like button, share this video. We'll see you in part 2. God bless.